What's up, everybody, and welcome to Tones Overthinks It, the show where I think too much to make up for the people who don't think at all. As you can see, we've arrived at a strange yet somewhat familiar location, one that seems to add a sense of increased confidence in my delivery and a bit more suave to my demeanor. Or maybe it's just this bottle of apple juice I found under the desk. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, as you may recall last week, I put out a completely different video for this episode. A video that included a rather amazing comedic musical number, with intent on elaborating on the fundamental differences between public and private information. Unfortunately, despite the video being enjoyed immensely by many people, apparently one person didn't enjoy it, and saw fit to ruin it for everyone. I am of course speaking of Amagansson Press, aka Mason Udderden.
Who is he? He's an asshole, sir.
You see, Mr. Butterton thinks that no one in this world is entitled to privacy except for himself. And he also thinks that his privacy is violated should anyone even mention his name. Hence why Mr. Shutterfin took it upon himself to issue not one, not two, not three, but 4 privacy complaints against my channel for having the audacity to say his name. Which I did, repeatedly, with a great deal of satisfaction. I regret nothing. And of course Mutterpin, being the narcissistic insecure weasel that he is, took it upon himself to also file similar privacy strikes against anyone else who dared feature or mirror the video on their own channels. A task in which he was not entirely successful. So feel free to pound sand, gutter trash.
You filthy, rotten, yellow son of a bitch!
Anyways, getting back on point, because Mr. Uttershite was successful in taking down the video, I felt I should at least go over how it happened and, most importantly, why it should not have happened in the first place. And I think the best place to start would be in fact where most content creators' problems start, YouTube. Specifically, their privacy guidelines. Now, the criteria for filing a privacy complaint does include the use of one's image, voice, or name without consent, hence why practically everyone Guttersnipe has ever filmed in his videos do have a right to request their likeness or voice be removed or otherwise taken down from YouTube. However, YouTube's privacy guidelines also have considerations that are taken when a privacy complaint is filed, specifically public interest, newsworthiness, consent, and whether the information is otherwise publicly available. So if a private individual's name, likeness, and voice were to become publicly available on a single YouTube channel run by some random nutterman that decided to film them, these considerations would not apply. However, in the case of people who are considered public figures, whose names and likenesses are well known and well documented, would fit these conditions as they are people who have knowingly put themselves out there. They have agreed to be the subject of public discourse, and thus would not be able to argue that their name and their likeness is in any way private information. Unfortunately, despite being supported by the clear wording in their own guidelines, YouTube doesn't actually adhere to it. It isn't exactly a secret that YouTube is not a friend to free speech and free expression, and that there are rules they can enforce when it comes to content, even if those rules and their enforcement of them is a f***ing joke. And while seemingly content to allow people to commit crimes, film them and upload footage of it and make money off of it, at the same time, they will gladly let those same people willfully commit censorship against other content creators who dare express or voice any kind of outrage or criticism for their clearly deplorable behavior. And while they certainly like to claim there's a process in place in order to dispute and appeal when something like that happens, they actually don't, and it's purely by design. YouTube offers no due process, no means of appeal, nothing. You are guilty until proven gullible to think you could possibly prove otherwise. I can't help but find it ironic that First Amendment auditors, these so-called guardians of free speech and rights and anti-tyrannical laws and policies, would so willfully and gleefully make use of a platform that has less due process, more censorship, and less respect for rights than most third world dictatorships. I suppose for First Amendment auditors, freedom and fairness and justice are only useful when it's convenient for them. So that's enough about YouTube's subjective interpretation of what constitutes a public figure. Let's now take a look at the actual precedents set down by the United States Supreme Court.
Haley versus United States. Haley 7, United States nothing.
First, in the case of New York Times v. Sullivan, 1964. This was a defamation case, where the courts ruled that a state would not be able to award damages to a public official who would be suing for libel against a publication, not without proving actual malice, in which case the statements made were knowingly false. This ruling would then be brought up again in a 1967 case of Curtis Publishing versus Butts, in which the question came up as to whether or not the previous ruling was applicable not only to public officials but to public figures as well. Ultimately, the courts did rule that both public officials and public figures do fall under the same standards established by the 1964 case. This then led to the case of Gertz v. Robert Welch, 1974, where the courts then had to determine if the respondent in this case was in fact a public figure, and thus requiring that an actual distinction between the two had to be established. The case would state as follows. Respondent's characterization of petitioner as a public figure raises a different question. That designation may rest on either of two alternative bases. In some instances, an individual may achieve such pervasive fame or notoriety that he becomes a public figure for all purposes and in all contexts. More commonly, an individual voluntarily injects himself or is drawn into a particular public controversy, and thereby becomes a public figure for a limited range of issues. In either case, such persons assume special prominence in the resolution of public questions. Now, this case actually did conclude that the individual in question was not a public figure, despite being well known in certain circles. But the fact is, it was specifically noted by the justices that people can become public figures only by consciously seeking out that status.
Everybody got that?
So in short, these three cases initially set the foundation that a private individual can become a public figure only through their own willful and deliberate actions. In so doing, establishing the concept of the public figure doctrine, and in today's age of social media and independent media, discussion has been made as to how to apply it. Similar to the public forum doctrine, there are three types of public figures. There are general public figures, which are individuals who achieve notoriety either on a national level or just within a specific geographic region or within a sizable community. Then there are limited purpose public figures, people who achieve notoriety by involving themselves in matters of public controversy and whose voluntary actions may actually hold influence over that controversy. And then there are involuntary public figures. These are individuals who have become involved in a matter of public controversy but made no initial efforts to inject themselves into it. So if we wanted to apply this doctrine to frauditor videos, I would consider any big-name frauditor who has willingly gone before mainstream media to show their face, their likeness, and put their name to their opinions on a matter that they consider a public controversy to fall into the limited purpose public figure category. Remember, they're not under any obligation to do this. They're free to remain anonymous and pretty much never reveal their identity to the general public. But by doing so, they have injected themselves into the subject of public controversy, and that's assuming they themselves aren't the subject of that controversy in the first place. As for the people being filmed by the frauditors in their videos, they fall under the involuntary public figure category. They did not choose to become a part of this. They didn't inject themselves voluntarily. Them being there simply as a consequence of them choosing to live their lives would not be sufficient to prove that they are willfully and voluntarily injecting themselves. So after discussing all of that, the question now remains, where does Grayson Butterkite fall into all this? Where does he stand in terms of public figure doctrine, as well as in YouTube's privacy guidelines? First, let's start with one of the many articles published regarding Basin Dutterton's arrest in Bay County, Florida. You know, the one where he completely broke character, dropped the tough guy bravado, and just became a whining, crying, begging shell of a man?
You're gonna make me sleep in jail tonight, sir? Please don't. Please, sir. Can't you give me an appearance ticket? I will show up in court. Please. Please, I'm begging. I'll give you whatever you want. Oh, but please, sir, please don't make me sleep in jail tonight, sir. Please. I'm begging. They're gonna make me sleep in jail. Sir, there's nothing we can do to discuss this, sir. Please. Sir, please. Is there anything I can do, sir? Please. Don't do this to my wife, man. You don't know what you're doing to my family, man. Please.
That will never get old, Dusterbin, and we will cherish it forever. So back to the article. First, you may notice right off the bat that the article knows Dutterden's name, probably because Dutterden, through his lawyer, volunteered to provide a statement in regards to the case. In doing so, Gooberton had consented to the press knowing his name. Not that they would actually need his consent, after all, freedom of the press and all that. God bless America and the First Amendment, right? Now you're probably thinking, Tones, that was just one article. Surely that can't be enough to declare him a limited purpose public figure. And you would be correct. Which is why I found Putterbin's name in another one. And another. And another. And another. Wow, so many articles concerning a matter of public controversy naming the same person. But sure, maybe his name is still private information. I mean, it's not like you could find it in any kind of public record. Oh wait, what's this? Why, it's an easily downloadable affidavit that's related to a public controversy covered in multiple news articles. Oh, and here's another police report where just some angry gnome got arrested at a healthcare facility while strapped with 2 loaded weapons and a knife. And that certainly wouldn't make you a person of interest in matters of public safety, now would it? And finally, my personal favorite, a letter to the editor containing one of Gutlessman's spiteful rants against Hollywood actor Alec Baldwin during their ongoing feud. A letter, by the way, that he knew would be published, and that he signed his own name to.
Gentlemen, we are fortunate.
Why?
He's an imbecile.
But sure, his name is absolutely private information. It was totally never connected to a matter of public interest, has never been newsworthy, certainly never provided with his consent, and of course, it's totally not publicly available. So a privacy strike would totally not be false, frivolous, and absolutely retaliatory because someone can't handle criticism because they're a complete and utter narcissist and they should change their name to Butthurt Man. But, then again, maybe I'm just overthinking it. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you like what you see here and you want to see even more in the future, please consider subscribing to my channel. Also, feel free to share your thoughts down in the comment section. I always love to read them. Till next time. Hey, what's this button do? Sorry.